Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome back to Triple Margin Freedom, the podcast designed for entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and for-profit executives who are in the grind day in and day out and want to create a culture that offers more profit or better results, better teamwork, unstoppable teams, and don't forget to recapture lost time. Better use of our time. If that's you, if you've struggled in any of those areas, or if you're just curious on how you could continue to get better and better and better, well, you've come to the right place. My name's Mark Mathia, and I'm your host for this session. We're going to tackle an important question that was sent in to me from a former client of mine. And she said this, she said, Mark, I'm stuck. Every time I give a presentation or step out on my own, I get hit with a heavy dose of imposter syndrome. There's that word again, right? How can a high-level leader deal with that crap without freezing and keep momentum on their side? And friend, I get you on this one. You see, imposter syndrome is kind of turned into a buzzword, but it's actually a little bit more than that. It can be a real deficit to business leaders, especially high-impact business leaders who are constantly needing to step out and make a change in their community. Now, this only gets amplified, and I can give you firsthand knowledge if you go through a season of failure. If your journey from one mountaintop to the other mountaintop takes you through the valley of doubt, you'll have the scars to prove it. That's why I always say I'm a lifelong entrepreneur and I have the scars to prove it, because in those moments, imposter syndrome tends to start to whisper. Did I not have what it takes? Can I do it again? Should I get back up? Or is this just the way it's always going to be? And the good news is don't panic. It's not the way it's always meant to be. And imposter syndrome can show up in individual leaders for a number of different reasons, but it always gives the same similar effects. It gives a feeling or a sense that we're over our skis, overwhelmed with the challenges ahead of us, and perhaps we don't have what it takes to be like A, B, C, or D, right? Especially if we're into comparison. And that can really be crippling. And so a natural response for leaders to imposter syndrome is exactly what you said, is freeze. You get stuck, and that's what I would call it. And I remember a time when I was absolutely stuck for a season. We had grown a company from, a modest amount of revenues up to around 10 million, and life was good and we were really kicking butt. And then we walked that bad boy right back down. And it was the decline or the walking back down that caused me to self-reflect. There's a lot of things I wish I would have done different. And coming out of that situation, I had a choice to make. I could have taken the route of the imposter syndrome, which said, hey, you really blew it, Mark. You should have known this. You should have known that the federal government was going to do this. You should have known that the environment was switching. You shouldn't have put too many eggs in this basket or that basket. And folks, if there was a thing I could do wrong, by chance, I did it wrong. Now, the good news was I always did it wrong, but full steam ahead. And that in and of itself can cause a problem. But having survived that, I know firsthand what it feels like to have that heavy weight of that imposter syndrome follow you around. And I got to tell you, there's no place to lead from it. So in this episode, we'll go over a few things. We'll go over how did I attack getting out of imposter syndrome when my world was turning upside down? How did I recalibrate, readjust, and realign to get back into the flow of things and finally get that momentum shifted back in my direction? And then we'll share some examples, some stories, and I'll give you a few takeaways that you can begin to practice this concept that we're going to be talking about today, which is really overcoming imposter syndrome. And there's a very specific way I did it, very specific. And I'll say it here, but then I'll start to unpack it, because I think any one of us can overcome imposter syndrome by out-serving it. You see, when we have a service mindset, something inside of us shifts. I had a coach who often told me, Mark, the ego complicates, the soul simplifies. And imposter syndrome is a case of a leader wrestling with your own ego. But let's get more specific about it. Let's define it for you. So I wrote down the definition here. So the definition of imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments and have a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Despite evidence of their competence, So even if we know that we're doing a good job, we tend to forget about that and we only focus on those things that make us feel like we're not. Okay, despite evidence of their competence, it often manifests as attributing success to things like luck or timing or external factors rather than your personal ability. Now, there is something about all of those things, having luck or everything else, but I will tell you that by and large, we kind of co create our own luck. And that even if you're very lucky, if you don't do the right small things day in and day out, you never seem to get luck to really impact your business the way you need it to be impacted. So this is really important concept and a really important definition because a lot of leaders tend to struggle with it. But is that true? Is this thing called imposter syndrome an actual problem in corporate America? Now, I can speak to it anecdotally, and the people that I've worked with, the teams that I've been engaged with, led with, and I can give you some anecdotes and say, probably, yeah, it's an issue. But I want to get more specific here. So I pulled some key stats from some verified sources for us so that we know that this imposter syndrome isn't, just a passing fad. So I've been to a few coaching events where the coach was on stage and say, I don't even believe imposter syndrome is a thing. And I agree, in that it shouldn't be crippling as it is. But to claim it's not a thing is kind of like putting your head under the sand and waiting for a tide to come in or something. I don't know what that meant, but you know what I'm saying? It's like ignoring the reality. Here's the reality. 71% of United States CEOs experience imposter syndrome, according to a 2024 Korn Ferry survey of about 400 executives. So that's a pretty good sample pool. And that's a big number for CEOs, right? Business is getting more complicated, and CEOs need to have more mental flexibility and resiliency to keep up with the pace of change. Otherwise, they find themselves in that position of feeling like maybe they're a fraud. Things have gone too fast and they haven't kept up. But there's more. 65% of senior executives feel the same. So that's just senior executives. So beyond the CEO, we're talking about the C-suite. 65% of them feel the same, according to that same Korn Ferry report. 75% of female executives across industries have experienced imposter syndrome. Now, that was a little bit older study. That was found in 2020 in a study of 750 high-performing women. Additionally, 85% of them said it's commonly experienced by women in corporate America. So it's almost natural to do that. Now, part of that is there's some biases built into our organizational structures. There's still those glass ceilings. Hey, look, folks, those things are out there. And I often find that it's almost twice as hard for strong women leaders to gain momentum and get past this imposter syndrome because as a culture, at least in the United States, we still have these kind of barriers. Now, there's some great leaders breaking barriers and doing wonderful things. And by the way, they should and can, and so can you. So when we just get honest about that, it's just a little bit tougher because it always feels like a little bit of an uphill battle for women in leadership roles. Now, you can say what you want about that. That will raise some ire, and you'll kind of look at me and say, "Mark, was that a fair assessment?" And I would say, absolutely, it's fair. To the people I work with, I understand that. And by the way, I also understand that how much power that a woman has in business today and how much opportunity there are. But I also know that we have to get a few things right. And I always go back to my methodology, which is the Catalyx PSC, psychology, strategy, energy, over and over and over again to begin to break through some of those barriers. But that's a very significant finding from Korn Ferry on imposter syndrome, and KPMG, as a matter of fact, had that one. So here we go. So we have overall 78% of business leaders have faced it at some point. So whether you're in it, whether it's now, whether it's crippling business, whether it's not, the fact remains it is there, and it's harder for some than others. And this whole concept of imposter syndrome is something that you'll want to watch out for. And in a healthy team dynamic, you'll want to help coach around. You want to help shed some light on it. You want to help people get into the rhythm so that they can begin to perform beyond things like that, worrying so much about that. And again, tied directly to the ego. So it's hard to move past the ego and move into something bigger, but it's a necessity. And the higher you go up in the organization, the bigger the problems you solve, the faster those problems that you're solving change. it gives more opportunity to feel like maybe you're an imposter or you're a fraud. So, how do we do this? Well, I would say the key to imposter syndrome and winning at work is to outserve imposter syndrome. So you've heard it there first. But in doing so, in outserving syndrome, we learn to serve up, we learn to serve out or laterally, and we learn to serve down. Because the key to overcoming imposter syndrome is a change of mindset, meaning instead of gauging everything by your worthiness, you instead gauge it by how you can help. And you can be an expert in any particular field by simply being 10% smarter than the person to your left or to your right. If you just do the homework, you'll be able to elevate that worthiness. But imposter syndrome happens because it's tied to this thing of worthiness thing. You're worthy because of your to-dos. But the truth of the matter is you're worthy because of who you are, because of what you bring, because of how you inspire and make people feel, and because your particular approach to those problems is unique to you. And as long as you're serving other people, it's really easy. Let me give you a clear example. When I was starting out in the speaking circuit, I would get up into corporations and give a talk. And I was so nervous. I was so consumed with myself that I literally would sweat through a suit coat. Now, it is a challenge to do that. The only other man I've known to sweat through undershirt, shirt, and a suit coat was Al Gore. And I think between him and I, we had a record for that. But here's the truth. The truth was the reason I was getting so nervous is because I was out there to prove that I was worthy to be out there. I wasn't out there to serve. But when I switched my mindset from that mindset of being worthy to a mindset of being of service, everything shifted. All of a sudden, I could get through an entire presentation without locking up, without getting nervous, without that rush of energy that happens. And as you forget everything that was in your brain, it's gone. Why? Because I'm simply there to serve. Even if I come in there with a full-blown presentation that I've mapped out to the T and I get thrown a question at the beginning and it takes us totally off track, if I'm serving the audience, if I'm giving to them what they need, if I'm helping them integrate the learning that I'm giving into their daily work, then I'm winning. I'm okay with that. And that's what I mean when I say in order to get past imposter syndrome, we need to outserve it, service it. We need to get from am I worthy to am I of service? And if we can stay in that being of service mentality, then it all opens up to you and you start to get more confident and more comfortable because all you have to know is 10% more than your audience and you can serve them something of great value. So when I give talks, I always help people find the aha moments because it really helps solidify the fact that I am there to add value, not just to talk about relevant statistics about Mark Mathia and what I do and how I help. And even in coaching, even in my coaching, I don't often say I'm a salesperson. You know what I say I am? I'm a coach. So if you want to engage with me from a coaching perspective or form a relationship or hire me as a coach, put real simply, well, we don't start with me telling you all about my coaching. We start with you experiencing my coaching. And if my coaching adds value on that very first session, if there is a connection, if you walk away feeling like, wow, I've just gained something from that, that's all I need. That's all you need. I want to serve you from the very first time we meet. And whether you go forward or not doesn't matter because what matters the most is that I'm constantly adding value. And that, my friends, is how you use service to overcome that need to always feel worthy. I am not smarter than the people that I coach. Let me say that again. No coach is smarter than the people that they coach. As a matter of fact, the people that we coach within each and every one of them have the answers within them. Our job simply should be to show up and create space so that optimal thinking can be inspired, ignited, and put into action. Weighed, measured, balanced, and put into action. That integration of our talent or our person we're working with ideas coming to life is the most important conversation we can have. And it has little to do with me. The other day, I was asked about a particular client white paper that I have, and they had some tremendous success as a team using Clifton's strengths and some leadership coaching that went along with it. And someone said, "Boy, you must feel really good. That was a really great progress that they made." And I simply said this. I said, "I always feel good when I get to coach, but you have to remember, I'm just the guide. That the person who is being coached and who's taking the actions, who's giving themselves time to think and process what's going on and how do I take the next best steps forward for the organization and then own those outcomes, that's the winner. They're the hero. My clients are the hero. I simply guide people there. And again, that's how I can take my coaching or my speaking and outserve any kind of imposter syndrome, because the right person for you is going to be someone who understands that about themselves, isn't going to expect themselves to have every answer for you, and is going to be willing to help you co-create that answer, to figure out that answer by asking questions that stimulate and spur the best of your creative thinking at any single problem that you might have. So that's how we overcome imposter syndrome, by action. So there's a couple things that I want to say more about this, but let me go to just one of the quotes that I really like. It was by Martin Luther King Jr. He said this. He said, "On the power of usefulness, life's most persistent and urgent question: what are you doing for others?" Isn't that beautiful? Thank you, Dr. King. Now, there's another one that I really hold close, and it was Mahatma Gandhi. And he said, "On shifting to service, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." Isn't that so true? So, what are some actionable takeaways or practices that we can learn to begin to implement? So, here we go. Takeaway number one, right? Why don't you create a daily usefulness check in? So each morning, shift from "I am worthy" to "where can I be useful today?" So again, as you're thinking about mantras and thing to say, shift from "am I worthy" to "where can I be useful today?" Start to journal it. Here's the 3 ways I can be useful today. And don't forget to serve up. So how can you serve your boss today or your board today? How can I serve across? These are your peers and allies. And how can you serve the people that you're leading? See, if you come with that kind of mentality, I guarantee you imposter syndrome doesn't stand a chance. Takeaway 2, the heart versus mind audit. This is a really important one. So in meetings or communications, pause and ask this question: am I coming from worry or ego or care? Heart, right? The difference. Am I doing this because I'm fearful or because I care? And if you stay in that heart made, reframe to focus on helping others, reduces the selling feeling. So even if you're in a high stress sales environment, say you're selling cars or something like that, switch from "am I selling" to "am I serving?" And that's going to give you the platform to step out time and time again to help consumers make the best decision they can about the right vehicle they can, because you're serving them. You don't have to sell them. Takeaway 3, spot and serve opportunities. So actively see where you can help by scheduling weekend check-ins with team members or peers. I have one client now who's doing skip level meetings so that she can stay connected to everyone in the organization. I think it's absolutely brilliant. But schedule these check-ins and offer support without expecting any credit. Just serve. How can I help? What do you need? How can I be there for you? And then just do it. See, this crushes doubt through visible impact, because each week you're helping each person in their own individual way do their job better, and you're going to feel much better about yourself. And you don't need that credit. Your ego doesn't need that credit, but you put yourself in the path of service. And that again is squashing down that imposter syndrome. Belief systems upgrades. My takeaway number 4, explore new mindsets like this. Read servant leadership quote or a book like I just gave you, right? The 2 from Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. King. Read those things over and over and track how it turns your stress into joy by reclaiming time and feedback and energy, because you'll let people lead and you're simply there to help. Now, by the way, some of you are wired to help, so you do this naturally. Some of you aren't. But those of you who do this naturally, don't overhelp. Don't overhelp. Remember, at the end of the day, our job is to inspire others so that they can be self-sufficient and lead on their own. So when we offer help, offer it in strategic ways that everybody grows. give them the ability so that they never have to worry about imposter syndrome. If you come in and solve too many problems, for example, they're going to start to have the imposter syndrome. The very same thing you outserved, you're going to give to somebody else because they're being served. And so it's a fine line of how much you help and how much you empower. And I would say always land on empower when you can. And finally, there's a call to action. And this is what I really want you to do. I really want you to comment on this platform and share your ways. You be of service to this group, this community right now. How do you overcome imposter syndrome? We can't have all the answers to everything. So I know each and every one of us at some point in our career are going to be dealing with this. So how do you overcome it? How do you keep free? I obviously try to outservice it. But what do you do? I'd love to know in the comments. So look, imposter syndrome has a grip, and it almost has a grip on a lot of different kinds of people coming up through the business ranks. And what I want to do is just make sure we have it under control. I guarantee you, you have talent, you have strength, you have everything you need to deliver the goods successfully. And you've done it time and time again. So many coaching conversations I have, I just point out that obvious fact. But it's owning that and then understanding that if I want to get beyond my ego, I need to get towards service. So how can I just do the right thing, small right steps over and over and over in service to those around me, in service to my company, so that I can make an impact, and you will free yourself of this kind of imposter syndrome focus. So when we focus on worthiness and not service, we're always driven by the ego, and that will always cause imposter syndrome. When we focus on service, we free ourselves to be ourselves and the best version of ourselves. One of the ways and the best way to get clarity and to get to that space in life is professional coaching. And one of the things I like to encourage each and every time is if you have questions about this, or if you've been struggling with imposter syndrome and want a partner to walk you through a season to help you get over it, then that is what a coach can help you do. So here's the call to action for this week. This week, I simply want you to pick one action that you'll take and commit to this week to help put you in a place of service. You can comment, put it in the notes. You can email me at mark@markmathiacoaching.com. or simply DM me on my phone. Simply let me know what you're thinking about in terms of how you overcome this or how you commit to service this week. Friends, this has been a fun episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. And remember, every one of us can overcome this thing called imposter syndrome. It's real. It's disabling. There's no pill for it, but there is a solution. And that solution is service. So out-service it. So if you can give more of yourself, the best of yourself within boundaries so that other people don't just carry that worthlessness forward because you help too much. But if you can get into that slipstream, if you can begin to ignite your inner service capabilities, I mean, we've called it for years, servant leadership for a reason. If you get into that mindset, you will be able to overcome every single thing that's standing in your way and that freezing that happens when you have imposter syndrome. Friends, my name is Mark Mathia, and this has been the Triple Margin Freedom Podcast. I hope this episode helps you take a step towards triple margin freedom in your business and your life. And until we talk again, get out there and elevate your moments. Thanks, friends. Talk again next week.